Empress Eve is here today, telling you what she's got to say. Empress Eve, Empress Eve, Empress Eve is here today. Hello, this is Empress Eve reporting live from the election night in the US of A. This is a time of serious worry and concern for many, not just in America, but around the world. And I decided that today I will contribute some information to clarify the high crimes and misdemeanors of Mr. Trump that often get glossed over just how many there are and were. And I would like to thank Mehdi Hassan from The Intercept for this very important list. And later on, I might be adding a few more of my own. But let me get started because, as they say, there's only one day to go before the election results come in. And every little bit of calling this man out for his shite is necessary. So here's my 10 billion cents worth. First on the list is A for Amazon. Trump has personally and repeatedly instructed the Postmaster General to double shipping rates for Amazon in an attempt to inflict billions of dollars of new costs on founder and CEO Jeff Bezos, who also owns the Washington Post. Now that's no surprise because Washington Post has not been favorable to Mr. Trump, as we all know, and also Jeff Bezos has more money than Donald Trump. So that's A. B. Bigotry. The president, who has referred to African countries as shitholes, to Mexicans as rapists, and to neo-Nazis as very fine people, is still the president. In fact, got elected even after he said all of those things. Let's be very, very clear about that we knew who he was before he got into power. He is somebody who has consistently promoted white nationalism, white supremacy, and xenophobia. C. CNN. In the summer of 2017, Trump personally intervened to try and block a merger between AT&T and Time Warner in order to punish CNN, which is owned by Time Warner, punishing them because of their unfavorable coverage of him in the press. And when he says unfavorable, read telling the truth and making him look bad because they tell the truth, and he don't like that. D. Deaths. Over the past 12 months, 6 migrant children aged between 2 and 16, 5 from Guatemala and 1 from El Salvador, have died in federal custody. Not a single migrant child died in custody in the previous 10 years. That's 6 children that died just seeking a better life, Mr. Trump, and no child had died before you were in power. E. Emolument, which is basically profiteering off the power of your presidency. So from pitching his struggling Doral resort as a venue for the next G7 summit, I remember that, to making more than 400 lucrative visits to his own properties and businesses. That means that he getting paid whenever he hosts an event at his properties, when other people have to book rooms to stay at his properties for his events. That man allow himself to make a profit while telling his base that he's donating his presidential salary because he's a good guy. Remember that. He also allowed Saudi royals to bail out his underperforming hotels. Trump has been violating both the domestic and foreign emolument clauses of the Constitution from day one of his presidency. F for fraud. The President of the United States is a fraudster. Mr. Hassan said, don't take his word for it. In November 2016, less than 2 weeks after he was elected, Trump settled 3 different fraud lawsuits related to Trump University for $25 million. New York Attorney General Letitia James announced the president was forced to pay $2 million for misusing charitable funds for his own political gain, and his Trump Foundation was shut down for misconduct. Now, this is the man that his base calls sent by God, full of Christian values. But when you think about the evangelical pastors who profiteer off their congregation, I guess he does look a lot like them. G. General Services. As the New York Times reported in October 2018, the General Services Administration, which manages real estate for the federal government, had planned to turn the FBI's headquarters in Washington, D.C. over to a commercial developer, until the president intervened to veto the sale. And why did he do that? Trump was opposed to the government selling the property, which would have allowed commercial developers to compete directly with the Trump Hotel, which happened to be only a block away. If Trump is able to try to oppose these kind of dealings, then Trump is able to oppose anything that he does not profit from. H for hush money. We know, says Mr. Hassan, that Trump's former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, who is serving a 3-year prison sentence for campaign finance violations, tax fraud, and bank fraud, made illegal hush money payments to 2 women. Those were Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. Now let's bear in mind that Mr. Cohen was involved in the finance violations, tax fraud, and bank fraud at the direction of Mr. Trump. So he's the one in prison, and Mr. Trump is still president. I. Incitement of violence. The president says Mr. Hassan is a threat to law and order, as New York Magazine's Jonathan Chait has observed. On at least 8 occasions, Trump has encouraged his supporters, including members of the armed forces no less, to attack his political opponents. In addition, a bevy, Mr. Hassan says, of domestic terrorists arrested since 2016 have cited Trump's name, his inflammatory rhetoric, or both, as the reason for their actions. Hasn't he done the same thing again, celebrating those insurgents who tried to run Mr. Biden's bus off the road and there was no police to stop them? Trump celebrated them, telling them they had done a good job. Jared, that's J for Jared. Trump demanded that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, be granted a security clearance despite objections from intelligence officials. They warned that Kushner could be compromised by his business ties to foreign governments. Mr. Hassan said the president may have the right to give anyone a security clearance, and yet, as House Judiciary Committee Chair Gerald Nadler explained in March, you can do things that are within your power that are still abuses of power and that are crimes. So Mr. Kushner fully exploited his position, and they are profiteering illegally while in office holding security clearances which make them vulnerable to blackmail. Let's all be very clear. K for kids in cages. The Trump administration, as a matter of policy, separated more than 5,400 children, including babies and toddlers, yes, we're speechless, from their migrant parents at the Mexico border. Hundreds of those children were locked up. This is a clear violation of international law, and experts with the United Nations Human Rights Council said the policy may have also amounted to torture. I don't think we needed the qualifier of may. It's torturous emotionally. Let's be very clear. Let's not play word games. This is the reality of the man that we are dealing with. L for lies, lies, and lies. Trump has told more than 15,000 falsehoods since coming to office. And to quote presidential historian Douglas Brinkley, there is no president that lied as if it was a form of breathing except Donald Trump. But lying isn't an impeachable offense, apparently. But it is when you're in office and you lie constantly and you incite hatred and you push people to attack your opponents. And then you lie some more. You lie over COVID. You lie over things that people dying over. You lie to your supporters. You lie to everybody in the country. It is an impeachable offense. Let's be clear, man. That is going to be my catchphrase. Let's be clear about what we're dealing with. M for media attacks. Trump, as even Fox News host Chris Wallace observed, and it must be bad if somebody at Fox criticizing, is engaged in the most direct, sustained assault on freedom of the press in our history. The president asked the FBI to jail reporters who published leaks, threatened to revoke the broadcast licenses of media organizations that criticize him, and relentlessly attacked and demonized journalists as scum, slime, sick people, fake news, and the enemy of the people. And we know whenever Trump talks like that, he projecting out his own qualities and his own abuses. N for negligence. Local officials in Puerto Rico have blamed presidential negligence and incompetence for the deaths of nearly 3,000 people in Puerto Rico in the wake of Hurricane Maria in 2017. Trump's response? He falsely claimed that 3,000 Americans did not die. He also tried to illegally withhold much needed and congressionally appropriated disaster relief money. He didn't want a single dollar going to Puerto Rico. Instead, he wanted more of the money to go to Texas and Florida. This man watched people suffer at the hands of a natural disaster, died in their thousands, and said he didn't want to give them any relief money. Is it a coincidence that those people are considered brown people? We wonder if it's a coincidence and that the money he wanted to go to Texas and Florida are in those states that will be pivotal of him being reelected. Not a kind man in any way, right? Oh, obstruction of justice. Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, which was ridiculous, let's be honest, redacted, of Russian interference in the 2016 election identified 10 instances of possible obstruction of justice by the president. More than 1,000 former federal prosecutors agreed that Trump's conduct, had he been a private citizen, would have resulted in multiple felony charges for obstruction of justice. And if Congress had any decency whatsoever, he would have been arrested and removed from office. Let's be clear. Yes? P for perjury. Hassan said we know Trump lies all the time, but how about the lies he tells under oath? The president told the Mueller inquiry, I do not recall discussing WikiLeaks with former advisor Roger Stone, nor do I recall being aware of Mr. Stone having discussed WikiLeaks with individuals associated with my campaign. Blatant lies, as we know. His former deputy campaign manager, Rick Gates, said in court that Trump had been well aware in advance of WikiLeaks disclosures in 2016 based on his conversation with his longtime friend, Roger Stone. It is perjury, called perjury what it is. Q for QAnon. Mr. Hassan said you heard of QAnon, right? The batshit crazy group of online conspiracy theorists obsessed with a deep state plot against Trump. I think batshit crazy doesn't seem very journalistic, Mr. Hassan, but I'm with you on the conspiracy theorist part. The president has retweeted QAnon supporters on multiple occasions, invited them to speak at his rallies, hosted them at the White House, and all of these things where QAnon promote violence, then Mr. Trump is also promoting violence. They promote extremism, so Mr. Trump is promoting extremism. Another reason for his removal from office that should have happened but didn't.
May it happen now.
R for rape. Trump has not only been accused of sexual assault and harassment by dozens of women, but the writer E. Jean Carroll also accused he of raping her in the dressing room of a luxury department store. What can we say? She even has DNA. There have been so many women have come forward and said this man has assaulted or raped them. One person coming forward is enough. When it is in the dozens, the man should not be in power. Let's be clear. S for Syria. Less than 3 months after entering office, Trump launched airstrikes against Syria without a vote in Congress. Democrat Ted Lieu, a former attorney in the Judge Advocate General Corps of the U.S. Air Force, called the strikes freaking illegal. Yes, that says it all. They're just illegal. And not one of the Republicans came forward and said, this is too much. This man must leave. He must be removed. And they blocked every move for the Democrats to oppose that action, as they always do. T for tax evasion. In October 2018, a blockbuster 13,000-word investigation by the New York Times found that Trump received at least $413 million in today's dollars from his father's real estate empire, much of it through tax dodges in the 1990s. What kind of tax dodges? Asked Mr. Hassan. He and his siblings set up a sham corporation to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents. Records indicate that Mr. Trump helped his father take improper tax deductions worth millions more on top of that. Speechless. I don't even have a sarcastic comment. It's too much. U for ultra-vires. Trump declared a fake national emergency to circumvent Congress and fund his border wall. Trump himself admitted that there was no emergency or even urgency. He said he didn't need to do it, he just wanted to do it quickly. He didn't care if it was illegal, against the law. Nobody was going to stop him because he's Trump. And because his members of Congress allowed him to get away with it, he might have a point. V for Vladimir. The Mueller report may have ruled out criminal conspiracy between Trump and Vladimir Putin, but we know that Trump welcomed Russian help during the 2016 campaign because he did it on camera, live, and later suggested that he wasn't bothered by Moscow's interference in the election. We also know that Trump handed over classified intel as he welcomed in those Russians, remember, into the Oval Office. He handed them over classified intel. Well, if you can't even protect your own country from people who want to destroy your country and you're still in office, the problem isn't with intel. The problem is with you. And the problem is with your system. W. Witness intimidation. Michael Cohen announced that he was postponing his public congressional testimony because of ongoing threats against his family from the president and his attorney, Rudy Giuliani. And Trump attacked former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, as she was testifying in front of the House Intelligence Committee, prompting committee chair Adam Schiff to accuse the president of witness intimidation in real time. So Giuliani, who was in the Borat film being offensive with one of the characters in the movie, had his hands down his trousers. And then Trump himself actively intimidating people in real time, still in office, still up for re-election. X for G. Why is there no mention of the Chinese President Xi Jinping, says Mr. Hassan, in either of the two articles of impeachment that were brought by the Democrats? Why was it only the Ukrainians? If the Democrats' argument is that involving foreign governments in US elections is an impeachable offense as well as a threat to national security, then why stop at Ukraine? What about China? Indeed, especially as we've discovered recently that he has Chinese bank accounts, owes the Chinese enough money, has to pay taxes far more, 100 times more than he paid in the US. We know that Trump is in trouble if he does not get re-elected. The man corrupt and he corrupts everything around him. Why for Yemen? In Syria, Trump dropped bombs without congressional approval. And by dropping bombs, we know we are talking about attacking a country, civilians in their wake, people who are innocent. Trump dropped bombs without congressional approval in Yemen, the scene of the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Trump has helped Saudi Arabia to continue to drop bombs despite explicit opposition from both chambers of Congress.
Enough is enough, man.
How you could allow this man to be in power for 5 minutes more. And Z, the end of this crazy list, is for Zelensky. The President of the United States didn't just abuse his power in attempting to pressure the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, to investigate Joe Hunter Biden. He tried to bribe him. Pelosi accused Trump of bribery, and so too did the House Democrats' 169-page impeachment report. Yet, when Democrats actually unveiled the articles of impeachment, bribery was not on the list. Lots of things was not on the list, according to this list by Mr. Hassan. I would like to thank him again. Thank you, Mehdi. It's comprehensive and disturbing. And a reminder, if you would like to read the original articles by Mehdi Hassan, you can find it at theintercept.com. Thank you for tuning in because I don't really have any words to add. This is a troubling time. This is a day of reckoning. If you haven't gone out to vote, then in your own way you must be complicit in the madness continuing. And if you're a Republican planning to vote for Trump, I don't really have any words because there's nothing that could convince you in the first place. Let's hope, let's pray, let's demand that sanity is returned to politics. And then once Trump gone, let's start on the UK and Boris Johnson and he crazies. Because Lord knows this world is becoming a very dark place and it needs some light. It needs some goodness to return to it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, please like and share. If you're listening to it on Apple, please rate it high. And if you don't like it, don't rate it because that's not good. You can also support me on Patreon. The link is in the description box. And I look forward to speaking with you again, hopefully with some good news. So until next time, Empress Yve out.